Hello, it is I, Smile. We are here with Age 113 Final Changes. Oh my god, it's here. The sleigh bells are ringing. Ringing. Couldn't even get through my intro without speaking wrong. Here, I thought I spoke good. Alright, we have open and start date, but no end date yet. As usual, plan for a 70-day age and expect, if it's significantly longer or shorter, for science to be stronger or weaker. But as we'll see, there's no significant science buffs going on this age, so I think it's going to be a slightly different kind of age than we've seen. What do we have? Age of Merry Mayhem. Bells are ringing, raises are singing. We have our festive rotating global buff week between the Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. Random hidden short list of buffs. We don't really know what they'll all be, but it'll, it affects everyone, so it doesn't change that much, I don't think. Cooldowns reduced to 23 days from 24. That's good quality of life. Activated abilities now last 2 days at minimum, which is very nice. These are good quality of life things. And if you're really ahead of the curve, you can activate something, 2 hours early, use it right at the end of the duration. And then if you have, say, like an 11-hour attack time, you can sort of get something off in every other wave, at least for a little bit. So there is some finagling you can do there to get a little extra power. Sort of like mentor durations. If you're always just taking your mentor when their army gets home, you can screw yourself. But if you're taking their mentor early, you're much more likely to be able to use their province when you need it. The more you know. Qualifiers for how successful attacks work and what they mean in reference to unique abilities. If you're at war, you have to be targeting the person you're at war with. Bonuses don't stack, they simply renew. Okay, we're back? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm just pulling the cord out here, so hopefully we're good. I don't know. I hate this. You're just literally making it even worse to give button. Like, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? So you wave someone, any good wave, if you're even at the start, is a 10% net worth wave. So now, when you give buttons, they also win a bunch extra when you fucking lose because you gave them another goddamn button. Like, that's just stupid, is it not? Like, isn't this a step backwards? Like, this is just, hey, everybody, try even harder debate wars. Just try even harder. And, like, if you get waved to within 10%, you're definitely going to be trying to, like, fucking net worth drop to get declares. Like, I don't know. And 30% honor is huge. Like, that's way too high. Whatever. I'll just win because I'm amazing. Amnesia not accessible next age. I believe this is because Amnesia is bugged. I won't go into specifics, but, you know, the people that know, and we're gonna try and fix that. Well, I mean, I'm saying we, but I have no connection to what's going on. They're gonna try and fix that. And we'll see that there's much less science buffs in the game. There's no Sage, and so the Amnesia should be less impactful anyways. In general, Amnesia is best at targeting rogues, and so you might, you know, have a silent buff to rogues there. It's also a really good honor farming spell, so it might be a bit of a nerf to casters that use it to farm. But overall, I don't think it'll be too impactful. What do we have? Avians. Avians have minus 25% attack time. That is a slight buff from last age. 20% birth rates. That's a nerf from last age. Skybound is the same, but you now have minus 50% losses instead of 0 losses, so that's a nerf there. You have the same 2 spells, Town Watch, Reflect Magic. You have the same military, except you have a nerfed O-Spec. The O-Spec net worth is still wrong, guys. That should be 4.8. And they also have 15% higher casualties instead of 10%, which is... Normally, I say a 5% change never matters, but I think it's really noticeable on Avian. I used to say it wasn't, like, not that long ago. I would just say, well, whatever, just build hospitals, run a stalwart, blah, 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 blah. I've really noticed it on Avian. I haven't run Avians, to be clear, but every time I wore Avians, they just fucking collapse. Well, not every time. I've lost to some Avians, but... when I win against Avians, I can really notice this penalty, let's put it that way. So, overall, you know, you're seeing a nerf from last age. Avian was pretty strong last age. I still think Skybound Strike is an enabler that no other race has, and so you have to keep that in mind when evaluating Avian, but it's not my favorite right now. I'd say it's a solid B tier. There's nothing wrong with it. You're fast. You're really fast. You have a ton of build space. You're all synced if you're all Avian, so I don't hate it, but I'm not loving the minus casualties thing these days, so maybe try to accommodate that with I don't know, a necro pick, a cleric pick, whatever gives you good health. Dark Elf. WPA bonus, OME bonus, train thieves with credits. This is all the same as last age. Slight nerf to WPA. Shadow Surge is a massive nerf at now only minus 60% rune cost. It's a massive nerf, but it's not something you can account for with honestly not that much effort. And so to even call it a massive nerf is sort of overstating it, but you know, the difference between 0 and 40 is, you know, infinite. But, you know, for what you're going to do with this will be fine. And I was wrong. I kept saying last age that, or not last age in my previous videos, that Dark Elf had the built-in minus 50%, but they didn't last age, so ignore me. They have Blizzard Guiled, Mage's Fury, Invisibility, same as last age. They have plus 20% wages, which is not great. That's a pretty tough thing to have. Hurts. And I believe they have the same military. No, their elite actually got buffed. So, a very strong army here. You've got a 17.5/11 offense. That's just about the best in the game. It might even be sort of the best in the game. So militarily, Dark Elf is insane. They've got Thief Train with credits, which is a huge economic bonus. Their elites are relatively cheap, so they're not hard to pump. They've got the WPA and really good spells. The unique is really good for casting, so an incredible, attacker, thief, attacker, mage, ATM. Not a great TM, a pretty good hybrid. Like, I feel like you can run just 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 EPA and 10 D specs per acre and be a pretty tanky hybrid if you want as well. So yeah, a lot going for Dark Elf. I'd put it at a pretty high tier this age, like an A tier attacker. I'm not sure how much you want to lean into Thieves with only Invis and Thief credits, but this could be really good in war. If you're in like an attrition war, you're playing hidden, and they're massing you to 0.1 TPA, being able to add in 0.2, 0.4 TPA at a time can be incredibly strong in those later points of the war. And again, a very good economic benefit just in End of War Ceasefire. So don't skip out on Dark Elf. There's a lot going for it. And even if you're not doing crazy Nightmare or Amnesia runs with this, just saving this for Landlusts can be huge. Dwarf. We got buffs to Dwarf, right? Yeah, I forgot they even had that last age. They actually lost building efficiency. And they lost the minus damage from TM ops. But they gained 25% attack or construction time, training time, plus 25% military credits. This got stealth edited as well. They're unique for 6 hours, gives them 15% BE, 15% income, 25% draft speed. The income and draft speed here are pretty negligible. I mean, it's a modest buff when drafting. In End of War Ceasefire, it's not huge because you're only having, 25% uptime. So it's a 4% income and 6% draft speed buff on average. And those aren't things that you can really spike intentionally. However, you can spike building efficiency intentionally because you can spike this for waves, you can spike this for training, and effectively have that 140% BE when you need it and want it. So on that vein, super strong with the BE. I say the word super a lot, but, who am I? Some guy that knows a bunch of adjectives. But I kind of liked some of what they had going in Revised a bit more. Construction time, this is nice just to have built in for returning armies. You make the most use out of that building efficiency each wave. But they don't have any, construction benefits. You're still paying full. It's hard to swap buildings. Train time is quite nice with credits. Otherwise, I consider training time only a slight End of War Ceasefire economic benefit, which isn't that huge. Miner's Mystique, everyone likes some gold. Food consumption, no big deal with the BE. 10% WPA, no big deal. Nobody notices 10%. Explore cost, who cares? Their military is unchanged from last age. Oh, actually, Jeez. I have no idea what Dwarf looked like last age, apparently. They actually lost offense on the Elite, and gained that higher Elite defense. Really expensive, really high net worth. You can afford it. Dwarf makes a ton of gold, but you are a horrible net worth sink with this big Elite. Something you just have to deal with. Dwarf's in a weird spot for me because I do think that you end up in a spot where you are really chainable if you're sending out all your elites because of your high net worth and you don't really have any mitigation built in. But if you don't have enough defense, if you have enough defense, your offense is really struggling. That elite isn't that big. So you need to be in a role where you don't want to get chained, and maybe having slightly lower offense isn't the biggest deal in the world. And then also, 25% military training credits is only so good if you don't, trad people and have a lot of offense to begin with. If you're just a core with 25% more offense, aren't you just gaining 25% more credits? So, Dwarf's in a really weird spot for me where I feel like it would take so little to make Dwarf really good, but I just don't see it. So, I'm going to do some thinking about how much I like building efficiency or not. I've actually enjoyed using castles last age for the first time in 25 ages that I've used castles. And so Dwarf could maybe use castles with the lower D-spec and be a little bit more suicide-y. I could see it. So it's something I'll think about and bring up to my kingdom. I don't necessarily think I'll run them. Perhaps they're fine as like a support eco role with like Dwarf Artisan sort of thing. Elf. We have a slightly nerfed elf. We lost 15% WPA, 5% rune production. You have the same 1% mana regen, so 25% WA, 20% rune production. Arcane Surge is the same. When you're below 30% mana, you get plus 25% spell damage. Main issue with that is if you're casting Greed and Meteor Showers, you're not getting that damage, so if you want an Elf Mystic, you've got to, cast Fireballs? There's no Amnesia next stage. People still don't use Tornadoes despite all the buffs, so do you really want Elf to be a Fireballer? So, I kinda don't love Elf as a pure Mystic. I do really like Elf as a Rogue or Heretic. Or you can mix it with your Fairy for Mystic. You're gonna be constrained on runes so badly with Mystic on Fairy, so... spells, Pitfall, Wrath, Mist, just a little bit more of a pain in the ass to hit Elf than other people. No training grounds or dungeons, not a big deal. I never run training grounds on my hybrids. I always prefer extra hospitals and forts. Their elite got a slight nerf in offense from last age, but they got a lot more defense, so it's going to be easy to sort of sit on a couple elites as an elf, be unbreakable, and use them to slay or hit people later in war if you need land or just add to the massacre count. Overall, Elf is perfectly strong. It has no weaknesses at all. It's got more than enough defense. It's got a lot of power to it. It doesn't have any built-in thief power, but that's nothing you can't figure out. Fairy. Fairy's essentially unchanged. Same duration, WPA, and mana regen, 25%, 25% plus 1. Same unique, which is the Mystic Vortex that gets rid of everything. Very useful in specific contexts. I use it a lot less than I should. I had 6 fairies last age, and I honestly used it less than once a war, and that's just negligence on my part, but I'm sure you guys can do better. Spells look the same, just gonna shift my eyes back and forth. Blizzard Guile, Mage's Fury, Greater Protection. Yeah, spells are all the same, but they've added Fool's Gold. So, Fool's Gold, as I've mentioned on a Mystic, can be very strong. So it's something to watch out for. Because a lot of that gold you might have traditionally thought of as safe is not as safe. The Mystic WPA is a lot higher, especially with Fairy stacking Mage's Fury on this. They effectively have, plus 60% WPA. Penalties, 30% rune cost, 5% BE. Same as last age, except the rune cost is down to 30%, and horses they can use now. You can actually kind of run an okay hybrid with Fairy. It's not going to happen, but you can. just because the 13 Elite is really high. Fairy's great. I ran Fairy Rogues last age that I didn't like very much. You would think with plus 25% WPA and 3+ raw WPA that you could avoid fireballs. We couldn't. I don't know what the hell was going on last age, but our Fairy Rogues got wrecked. Our Fairy Mystics struggled every single war until end of age, where they, seemed to do okay, but I didn't consider them any stronger than any Elf I saw all of last age. So we did see some small nerfs to Elf, specifically that WPA, but you did get the buff to Elf where they have access to Thieves' Dens now. Oh, Elf also lost greater protection, so they did lose some defense, some WPA, but they gain access to those Thieves' Dens, and I think that's pretty nice for Elf. Yeah, just you really need a plan for the early age runes if you're using Fairy, or just you can't have that many Fairy. We had only Fairy TMs, and it was just impossible to gain honor. Like, if you're not using your Rogue honor in Wars 2, 3, and 4, your Rogue mana to gain honor, your Rogues just aren't going to scale as good as other people's, so keep that in mind. But Fairy definitely has the strongest potential, with the highest elite and the most science potential with Fountain of Knowledge and Revelation, so shouldn't ignore it, but it does struggle a bit. Halfling. I'm in a weird spot with Halfling because I was wrecked by so many Halflings last age, and they didn't really get nerfed, but I still don't love them for some reason. So almost identical bonuses, 15% population, +1 stealth, 30% TPA instead of 40% TPA. Sneak attack is nerfed down to -50% losses from -75% losses. This is pretty huge for hybrids and rogues doing prop and assassinate wizards, especially at the very start of war. It gets a little less good over time, but in situations where you're controlled magically and you have a low BE, it's really strong. So it's something to watch out for. I think the 50% is a good idea here. Spells, Quick Feet, Town Watch, Vermin, Invisibility, no change there. Quick Feet, population, and their army makes them an incredibly viable hybrid. Invisibility is just nice, a little more TPA, a little more minus losses, great for hybrid, great for pure. Birth rate -25%. That's a bit of a problem as a hybrid. Building costs, it's a bit of a problem as a hybrid, and just for swapping in general, it's expensive. And the new penalty, an additional stealth is lost per tick from ET, so in most situations, you can assume that will cancel out with your +1 stealth regen bonus, but not always. Sometimes the people you're warring just have shitty wizards, or you've killed their wizards, or they're bad, or you have great WPA. All those things are possible. The elite net worth on Halfling has gone up by 1, and that is pretty significant for hybrid or when you're running offense. Net worth on TMs is generally bad to have, but I keep thinking that Halfling's worse significantly, but it's probably almost the same, so I'm of two minds of this. I'll have to think about it some more, but I would consider Halfling at least on par with Elf, and at least in the early game and for hybrid potential, stronger than Fairy and Elf for TM. Humans are crazy, man. You lost the 15% science efficiency, which was the strongest buff any race had in the game last age, so humans got the single greatest nerf in reference to that. What they have instead is 30%. It's just a full rework. They have none of the same abilities anymore, so they may as well rename them to trolls. Human bonuses, +30% income, immunity to riots and greed, minus 15% merc costs, minus 25% training costs. I believe training costs doesn't include thieves. Before you answer that question, it's a lot of income. Merc costs, they matter when they matter, but I'm a kingdom that crowns a lot, and I've run warriors with minus merc costs, and we are just about never using it. It's, you have prisoners, you're in a rush, you don't always have gold around, so it's just difficult for us. And if it's difficult for us, I'm sure it's difficult for most people. I'm sure you're special and different, but that's just how it is for us. Training cost, I don't think it matters that much. It's nice when you're out of war training O-specs, but I feel like you're going to have enough gold anyways. But your end of war ceasefire is hilarious. Like, you're going to be able to run very few banks and build whatever you want. So you have a lot of extra time to push wizards, push science. First aid is unchanged from last age. I don't love it. It's probably the least interesting and useful part of human, having run them last age. It's essentially a button you press so that you can get rid of explosions when you're chained, and that's it. And you can only do that once a day, so it can be baited out, but yeah, it's not amazing. It's fine. Fountain of Knowledge, Revelation, so you're still a little bit science-focused, but without that science efficiency, it's not quite as good. Plus 25% train time. I don't think that's too significant. I don't know what else to say there. It's, sort of annoying, but I don't really consider it much. All it is that every end-of-war ceasefire, people are going to ping me that my training date is wrong, and I'm going to tell them to fuck off, because I don't give a shit. And guess what? That happens anyways, because I don't pay attention to dates so good. And then the other big change to human here is their military. So they have the same elite, that same 710 or 712 at 1050, but the net worth went up a lot. Net worth is up to 8 net worth. That's over 1 per unit. So, that's only going to be like a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 net worth per acre bump, but it's there. It hurts. The only good thing is that as a defensive elite, when you get hit, you're losing those elites, and so the net worth drops a lot faster. Whereas if you have a high net worth offensive elite and you get chained, your offense isn't dropping. So, some good, some bad there for human. But the 13 O-spec with a 3-point elite is giving you +2 offense over last age. It's a 16-point offense with O-specs. It is straight up just worse militarily than Dark Elf. Dark Elf with 17.5 over 11, whereas we have 16 over 12. So you are straight up just worse than Dark Elf militarily before anyone thinks humans overpowered. But again, that O-spec focus can really help you with learn waves, with growing, all that good jazz. Almost worth training D-specs instead of elites just to keep net worth down sometimes, but I don't know if anyone's actually going to bother with that. I quite like human here. I think the income and immunity to greed is going to turn into a lot of dragons, and a lot of dragons is really nice. And I think you still have good science potential with the spells and with O-spec offense for learns. And good defense. It's going to scale. Is it the best? Maybe, maybe not. You don't have any of those things I like to talk about as being really important to have at least one of for your core, which is some sort of gains, speed, or sustain, which every other attacking race has, which is the same complaint I had about Dark Elf. You've got these great numbers, you've got all these auxiliary bonuses, but do you have attack speed, do you have gains, do you have sustain? Since you don't, I'm not sure what to say. I still think human is probably A tier or among the best core, so don't discount it. Orc. Orc has 10% gains in war, 5% gains out of war. It's an interesting out of war nerf. I've thought to myself about having token orcs just to hit TMs extra hard out of war, so this does sort of stop that. But it is really strong. 15% gains, it's like making an extra hit every chain. It's going to do a lot. Unique passive Carnage. Every time Orcs makes an attack, a random bonus is applied to that attack. Either extra casualties, extra gains, or minus losses. All three of those are pretty significant and good. You're not going to be sad about any of them, so rather than averaging these, I would just pick one in your head as canon and then add it to Orc. So in my head, Orc just has plus 20% kills, and I like that. Both extra enemy kills and minus losses stack really well with Bloodlust. Gains stack really well with gains. So all of this is good. They have Aggression and Bloodlust. Bloodlust is my favorite spell in the game. Aggression is meh. Penalties, minus 20% book production. Really not a big deal if you get any learns off. Like, if you want to be science-focused, you can overcome this. It's just a little bit of a nerf. Keeps you behind a little bit. It's worth, a 6 or 7% science efficiency nerf if nothing else changes. It also makes you a less attractive learn target, which is nice. Minus 20% thievery effectiveness. At its worst, your 3.5 TPA equals other people's 3 TPA. So if you consider it a 0.5 raw population nerf, then that's worth, 2 to 4% population? It's not a big deal. But it does make people naturally want to Night Strike you more. They think about it, they'll use it. And in that respect, you don't want to get Night Striked, and you don't want to encourage your opponent to Night Strike you smartly. And so it's less of a mechanical nerf and more of a mindset nerf. It encourages your enemies to be smarter. But neither of those are significant nerfs. They do have some pretty good buffs. They have the highest offense with an effective 18.7 with Bloodlust up. So you have the most offense, you have the most gains, and you have at least one of those other buffs, either more gains or a casualty-based thing. So you have sort of 2 of those 3 things that I said that you want as a base attacker. And really low elite net worth is also nice. So the thing about Orc is, and the thing about any attacker is, you're going to get chained. Every attacker gets chained. Sometimes when you get chained, you just get stronger. And Orc is one of those, because you become so concentrated in these elites with amazing offense and low net worth that you start doing really scary things to the enemy. And by that I mean multi-tapping enemy TMs in range, stuff like that. So keep that in mind. I think Orc is still perfectly strong. They're not busted. But they don't have any big penalties, and they have a few things going for them, so I'd put Orcs up in A tier as well. I think they'll be really underpicked because we've had such strong Orcs. Everyone's a little bit orced out. Why would you pick Orc this sage of all ages? So yeah. But overall, significantly nerfed from last age. So if you didn't think Orc was already, the best, then you're definitely not picking Orc next stage. Undead, minus 40% military losses, one of the best bonuses any of the core have. Plague immunity, no food requirement, it's worth 4 to 7% land, depending the point of the age. Convert specs to elites on successful trads, that's nice. It's not huge. It sort of lets you, learn wave and stuff out of war. Necrotic Burst, once activated, all attacks have a 100% chance to spread plague. This is an incredible bonus. I would say it's the best unique of any race. Having plague on a target is like having a 20% offense buff for your whole kingdom. Like, for something you can tokenize, it's incredibly strong. 20% more offense scales in a lot of ways on chains. Then they also are using their mana on plague removal instead of landlust. It's hurting their economy in other ways. Really, really, really like plague. You have Animate Dead, which isn't very important if you've got military loss built in. Aggression, who cares? But you've got the 3/3 Soldier for bouncing, which is very nice. Hero's Inspiration is a great spell. Everyone likes paying less wages. Penalties only accept the Thievery, Intel, Ops. This is a problem because of how strong core-to-core Night Strike has been recently at the top end. And by the top end, I mean just me and Hidden and maybe a couple of mid-tier kingdoms. Presumably Emeriti does it since they keep picking raiders, but I haven't actually watched any of their wars. Pretty strong. If you're just tokenizing it, this won't matter. If you're trying to run a big core of undead, I think one of the best bonuses of undead is with those minus military losses. In a big, long massacre and raise war, you're not overpopping people, which means their D-specs aren't going away from chains, which means the military losses come into power a lot more. So the kind of playstyle I think is really strong for undead is well penalized. So if you're not undead rogue, you should be thinking about running as low TPA as possible, because you are losing a lot of value there. Just run 1 TPA and 25% watchtowers and let loose. 3/3 Soldiers, really nice for bouncing. You've got the 10/10 specs is fine. You're not losing defense. 15/4 Elite at 900 gold is cheap and strong. You're at a 17/10 army, so your military is very comparable to, say, a Dark Elf, but you have the sustain and plague that Dark Elf doesn't have, and even a little bit of, free build space. So in straight up attack versus attack, Undead's gonna crush a province like Dark Elf. And your only recourse as a Dark Elf is to use that mana somehow. But guess what? If you're getting plagued and chained way deeper, that mana doesn't matter. That WPA doesn't matter. I'd say the biggest mismatch is Undead versus Dark Elf, because Dark Elf is so focused on using their mana offensively, and suddenly you've got to be... Like, if you're chained and you have 10 WP anyways, why does it matter that you have Mage's Fury and plus 20% WPA? And if you're losing mana on selfies and all that, it's just a big pain. So, I like Undead a lot. Gnome... You have 10% attack time in war, bonus military casualties, 15% TPA, and then you have Cunning Assault as a unique. Every attack has a replacing bonus of either plus 20% TPA, minus 30% thief losses, or plus 25% sabotage damage. All these actives can be simultaneously active now, but we don't have a chance on this. So does one activate every attack? Is it a 30% chance, 60% chance? What's going on there? So, alright, you're a gnome, you're using 4 gens, 3 gens every wave. Let's just assume you get all of these bonuses. You have Quick Feet, so you have minus 20% attack time, plus 15% enemy kills, plus 40% TPA, minus 30% thief losses, plus 25% sabotage damage on a 16/10 army. You've got rune cost and WPA, so it does hurt a lot to get chained. It's going to be easier to control you. Feel like probably going to be able to just massacre gnomes and chain gnomes, but it is a lot of attack speed. They're sort of like an attack thief version of a avian. They've got really low net worth on their elite as well, so I think the gnome's looking pretty strong. Probably an A tier attacker, but I need a little bit more details on how Cunning Assault is working. When it was only one random buff, I was a lot less happy. With all 3 buffs being active potentially, I can see that being a lot stronger, so we'll see how that goes. So you're like a halfling. You've got similar losses and TPA as a halfling, but you've got more damage. Your army is probably worse without the pop space, and it's going to be harder to fit in the TPA you want as well, but in a lot of ways, you can run this gnome with only 3 TPA, and you'll get your night strikes in. I really like the casualties. That one little bit adds a lot for me there, so I'm gonna say gnome's a lot better than I thought. I was already shitting on them before, but I guess my counterpoint would be is if you have an enemy core that's just sort of tanky and you're only getting 2 hits off a wave, and if this is a chance, also, because of the way it's a chance and the way things can be recast but just update the timer, you can hit 4 times. Maybe it's a 50% chance you get a bonus, but you could just hit 20% TPA 4 times and end up with only 20% TPA. So I'd have to know what a chance is in percentage, and I would assume that you can refresh these bonuses instead of always getting the bonus you don't have. So there is some sneaky negatives in there, but yeah, this is very similar to like a halfling, and that sabotage bonus makes me happy. So yeah, a viable core for sure. I'd probably say it's stronger than avian, so you got that going for you. All right, that's it for races. Artisans, slight buff to their building protection. You've got 40% building capacity, building production, building credits gained. You got the free, always successful intel. You've got 10% science efficiency is a great buff. And they've got ghost workers instead of quick feet, which is a significant nerf. You've got artisan nerfed from last age for sure. You still have demolition mastery, so 40% building raises instead of 30%. Overall, I still think artisan is strong. I just think they're less of a full core build now. I think you're just stuck running them in a support role. But, you know, if you want to tokenize your undead for a unique, if you want some really tanky gnome or halfling that can add night strikes, if you want sort of a weird hybrid like elf casting spells or DE casting spells, if you want a big rune producing dwarf, I think artisan's great. I just don't think you need more than a handful of them depending on what you're using them for. Cleric, +1 elite and D-spec bonuses, -1 self-spell cost, plus 35% hospital efficiency, immune to plague, salvation, revelation, divine smite, illuminate shadows, 50% chance for double duration selfies. Cleric is unchanged for many ages. Cleric is strong, but not as strong as almost every other core personality. Cleric is really good at baiting enemies that think it's not as good as it is. So you have a really strong core racially, You use Cleric to just make it that much easier for your power to really shut off the enemy, because you get so much defense so fast that the enemy just runs out of targets against you, and you scale with science and stuff. Perfectly fine. If you're also scared of undead, it can make sense just to be immune to plague. Heretic. Heretic's essentially unchanged from last age, slightly better science efficiency. I ran no Heretics last age. I think Heretic was perfectly strong last age, I just didn't run him. 50% whiz production, 50% thief loss, 20% spell and sab damage, 15% arcane arts spell efficiency, access to nightmares and fool's gold, and chaotic affliction. You deal 10 to 30% op and spell damage when activated. One of the biggest things I like to pick Heretic for is Fool's Gold, and now that Fairy Mystics can do that, I'm a little less drawn to Heretic. I'm quite liking the science efficiency there on Heretic. It's creeping up a bit. Nightmares are really strong. I think there's a lot of potential for tanky core next age, so having Nightmares in your back pocket might be smart. So just keep that all in mind. It's just perfectly fine. You're doing really good damage. You're scaling better than you used to. There's nothing bad with Heretic. Does it quite meet the goals of Mystic and Rogue? Maybe not quite, but I'd say it's the closest it's been in a while. So I'd say Heretics are perfectly reasonable to pick at this point. Yeah. Mystic, very plain Jane, 85% guild effectiveness, +1 mana, +25% channeling efficiency, pitfalls, meteor showers, mind focus, chastity. I'll repeat that I hate mind focus being on Mystic, but whatever. I believe pitfalls is on elf and fairy, so it's sort of useless that it's also on Mystic. Chastity I've seen used very little recently, so I don't worry much about that. So you're really just picking Mystic for Infinity WPA and Meteor Showers. Mana Well, you get 15% mana every day, so that's like an extra 0.6 mana a tick or so. So that's a lot of mana, right? You're an elf with 5.7 mana regen and plus 30% spell damage, or 25% spell damage. It seems like a lot. So I'd be interested in actually seeing some fireball focus coming back into the game. We haven't seen it in a while. I think Mystic is there. What was it last age? Did they just not have a unique last age, or did we just not include it in here? I'll just assume it was like this, but worse. Oh, it was +1 mana a tick for 6 ticks, I think. So yeah, just worse. Rogues, slight nerf to Rogue on the Thieves' Den and the Kidnap damage. Oh, no, they buffed this back to 25%. I'm becoming disillusioned with Rogues. I'm certain that Unbreakable Rogues are still the strongest Rogues. You don't need to say it every time I say I don't like Rogues, but you got a slight TD nerf. I'm just really struggling to get the max TDs I want to do the ops I want. AW, as bad as it is with Ascendancy, everyone just has wizards now. It's not as crippling as it used to be. 25% crime science only goes so far. In many instances, something like Gnome or Halfling is just out criming you anyways. It's meh. The plus 25% sab damage really only procs on War Start and then never again. So I feel like Rogue is just sort of behind. You are, of course, just still the best thief, and if you're picking the best thief race with the best thief personality, you're out thiefing everyone. Your potential to damage enemy TMs is far above that of anything else, but I'm just, I never pick heretics, and I'm always disappointed in my rogues, so I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just only run mystics next stage. P.S. Warbirds with only mystics. That, or, this is all a feint, so you won't know it's me when I pick all rogues. Yeah, you think of that, huh, idiot? Tactician, very plain tactician, 15% attack time, very good. Attack time used to be king. It's fallen out of favor a little bit, but it's still really strong. No thief lost on intel is fine. Immunity to greater arson, steel war horses. Both of those ops are used a lot less now than any time I can think of in the last 10 years. I think people have just started to raise and chain and night strike more, so I don't think that's crazy. It's only rogues, and I don't see rogues steal horses or greater arson anymore, so sort of a map bonus. 25% siege science efficiency is not bad. You get a fair bit of gains if you invest in it, but it's not something you traditionally want to invest in my experience. There's just so many other sciences that having to go out of your way for siege science efficiency is a little meh, but it's not nothing. Enhanced Conquest is only the out-of-war conquest, doesn't need net worth. Super useless bonus, nobody gives a shit unless you're a micro. Unique passive, 3% of your raw offense deals damage to the dragon. I don't care. If that just means you're full waving through dragon instead of slaying dragon, it's not good. If you were waving through a ruby or an emerald to kill it with this passive, it is going to be objectively worse than if you just slayed and then waved, because you will gain more than 3% benefit from not hitting into a dragon. So maybe with the exception of slaying like a sapphire with your wave, I don't give a shit about this. One benefit is maybe if you know you're just going to wave through dragons, it means you don't have to sort of pause and figure out slays when they're sent or waved. But yeah, it's the one big thing Tactician is missing out on, is a good unique to go along with the rest of its kit. The science isn't quite there. The auxiliary benefits aren't quite there. So you're only looking at 15% attack time, and honestly, a warrior with barracks does just great. It probably does better than a tactician with TGs. I often run low or no TGs on my core as is, so, Speaking of warrior, a slightly nerfed warrior, less merc and prisoner strength, more merc cost than before. But you've still got that 15% OME. You've got a little bit of extra strength there with prisoners, mercs, and cost. Tactician science efficiency is probably one of the best scaling sciences for attackers. Righteous Aggressor helps you learn wave and otherwise gain elites when you would normally pay for them, which is great. And Battle Cry, killing 0.5% of target population. Sort of useless. Not nothing, but sort of useless. But just the base kit alone is very strong. I'd say Warrior's probably your best core personality for sure. Offense just enables so much more than anything else. Because you can always build extra hospitals. You can always build extra barracks. But it's hard for other personalities to just build more offense. That's usually sort of your limiting thing. So if you can extend the cap on what your most limiting thing is, that's usually a benefit. Now we're getting into the weird stuff. Paladin. 20% military kills when defending, so this is like permanently active wrath. If you could stack this on, I don't know, elf, that would be kind of funny. Or even like if you've got an active... actually, let me check gnome real quick here. So you could stack this with gnome or elf or orc, and enemies are going to end up getting quite a bit of damage attacking into you, which is just kind of funny. I've done it before. Back in TFC, we had that sort of thing going on with, back then Bloodlust was stronger. We had huge defense. We had Wrath on all the core, so it was pretty funny to watch people just lose offense hitting us. +1 horse strength on average is, between 9 and 7% extra offense. So this is sort of like half of a warrior bonus, so don't ignore that. Immunity to dragon effects, nobody cares. If your whole core is paladin, you can do really good things with this, but dragons target TMs too, and most people want to protect their TMs more than they want to protect their core. So what happens is now your TMs permanently dragons. Now, I've seen people intentionally tank sapphires on their TMs because even on a sapphire, it's not easy to always target TM versus TM. And your TMs targeting their core can usually go through a sapphire, and it becomes a big deal. So you can actually make this work, even though I just said it's stupid. And for those out there, if you're going to make a Paladin Kingdom tank a dragon on their TMs, don't automatically assume it should be a Sapphire. A lot of times, an Emerald or Ruby and chaining those TMs is a much bigger deal than making them tank a Sapphire for 48 hours. Valor Science Efficiency, so you can stack not wanting to slay dragons with slaying dragons. Dude, that's so smart. It's sort of backwards there. I get the idea, but I feel like this probably should have been resiliency or something like that. Or maybe like a plus 50% buff to like heroism. I don't know. Righteous Aggressor, good spell. Salvation, good spell. Hero's Inspiration, good spell. A little bit on wages, a little bit of minus losses. That sort of elite convert thing going on. So you've got sort of half of a warrior effect with like half of a cleric effect. It's okay. Smite, once activated for 2 ticks, your next traditional march. So the fact that it's only 1 trad and it raises guilds, towers, and thieves' dens on trads only, it's just sort of meh. Like, if I'm getting chained as a TM, I actually don't give a shit about my towers and guilds, because now you've just made it easier for me to rebuild forts and homes. Thieves' Den can be annoying to lose as a pure rogue, but again, if you're getting chained, like, having Thieves' Den is not your biggest deal. Maybe a bigger deal than those other ones, but not the end of the world. I suppose it could be really annoying if you... Okay, imagine you're an undead paladin. See, this is where I could see it working. You're an undead paladin, and you're able to raise people's guilds on a chain with plague, and now they can't do shit like that. I can see that being okay. If you're raising an entire enemy core's guilds, then maybe that can be good for other things. It could be good for just stopping people from recasting rituals because they don't have guilds and towers. Like, that sort of stuff is good. But, like, it's so much worse than just, like, a raise, I guess. I don't know. I just don't think Smite is that powerful. And the Holy Massacre, killing peasants, again, this is on trads only. So killing peasants on a trad is pretty rarely the goal. And increasing spec casualties 15%, sure, that's fine, but it's not what I would consider a significant buff for one attack to have 15% more spec only kills. You're looking at like an average of 3% or less average kill buff, and that's just so small on as like a once a day thing. I don't know. So Paladin, I feel like it's almost there. I think you can make it work, but I just don't think it compares to Warrior or other personalities. I think it's just a little bit behind. I don't think many people will pick it. but it's not weak. Like, if I ran paladins, I'm still gonna beat, everyone that's worse than me. I'm not gonna just suddenly lose to noobs. So, there's a little something there. I kind of like it on undead, because now you're gonna be attacking undeads that have minus losses and taking bonus losses, and that just is kind of funny. It would whatever. Necromancer, 25% WPA buff, incredibly strong. It's not until pretty late in the age that people have, say, 100% channeling, which is when the crossover point with for raw WPA anyways, you would have with a Mystic. So 25% WPA flats, really strong, nothing wrong there. 25% of your own losses convert to soldiers. As I love saying, this is just not as interesting as minus 25% military losses. But in wars where you have unlimited credits on everyone, this is sort of like minus 25% military losses, because you are just retraining those instantly, and you have some ability to retrain them where you prefer to have them. So, but overall, not the greatest bonus in my opinion. Resilience, science, efficiency. I've been slowly coming around on resilience. I wasn't a huge fan, but I think that's one of the better sciences you can run right now for core, at least as a bonus. So I'd say this is behind warrior, probably your best core science bonus. This is what I really like. 30% of enemy military kills turn into soldiers. That is injecting a lot of population into your kingdom. I love this a lot. This is what lets you use credits more than any other bonus in the game. I would almost say that's, problem is no one has great spec credits right now, but yeah, this is the best bonus of Necromancer for me. Then you have Animate Dead, which is nice, because you're not built in minus losses. It's not very good, but it's nice. Nightmares, I don't think you're going to use this a lot, but it'll come up now and then, and it's nice to have. Mystic Aura, hilarious. It's just a pain in the ass, but not a huge benefit to have Mystic Aura. Grave Harvest, this is another one of those things where I think this is really stupid, because it's just not as good as, like, it's identical but worse to the Heretic one, because it's only spell damage, so whatever. 20% instant spell damage whenever you use it. That's fine. It's good for fireballs. You got the WPA, you got the nightmares. It's not nothing. It's just that Heretic is literally this, but also thieves. So it's just a little weird to me. It's fine. You are a caster. You want 20% casting damage. Problem is, there's no oomph here, right? You're starting the war like just weaker than everyone else, and it's not until after you attack and after you get credits and you use these soldiers that you start to gain strength. So this is another one of those bait personalities where you might get more wars because on your face you look weaker, and if they compare numbers and the numbers look even, then you end up winning because your strengths aren't coming from the numbers. Your strengths are coming from intangibles. So I'd consider it. You're going to be wanting to look specifically at ways that injecting soldiers is particularly strong, and ways that you either have a lot of offense or a lot of bonus kills to stack with this. So someone that wants to use Onslaught. So think about the rest of your kingdom, why they want Onslaught. Do you have a high offense core or a plus kills core like Gnome or Orc? So yeah, I think Necro's certainly on the table. Do I like it as much as just, say, Warrior with more offense? Probably not, but it's a different kind of thing. The 25% WPA there is, I think, more significant than the amount of time I've given it. It's just that it's a very boring bonus, but there's some races there that basically half of their bonus is 25% WPA, and you have that just sitting right there. Last but not least, General. +1 General. Really hard to use 5 Generals without Nightmare or really specific sort of chain and core setups. You really want to make sure you're using that General if you're picking General, because the rest of their bonuses aren't that great. +20% spec credits in War. Best part about this is out of War. I've gotten back sort of into the situation. Maybe it's just because I had a lot of offense in my recent wars, and I haven't had a lot of peasants, where I end up with more credits than I have things to use them on. -20% military training time, whatever. Can train elites with spec credits in War. Really big buff. And this is the number one thing that made Orc for me in recent ages. So you can have this available to anyone. It also makes your training in End of War Ceasefire basically free, because all those credits are elites, and you just get to push whatever else you want. It's interesting. I can see the kit working. Again, like I mentioned with Necromancer and some others, this gives you no strength at the start of War. You're getting your strength through intangibles and execution of War, and these sort of benefits can be easier to constrain, because if your enemy is someone that just is really good at pop control, suddenly free elites doesn't help that much. If your enemy is someone with a lot of defense, suddenly +1 General doesn't help that much. And then you have their unique General's Command. All your attacks have +60% honor gains. So this is basically, you just pick this to try and win Honor Crown, even though it's just worse. And you just do your best to get easy wars and then win a crown. Listen, we've all done it. I've done it. I've picked the personality that's just meant to do that plenty of times. I'll probably end up having to do it again, right? Like, I'm almost gonna need to go generals, because a kingdom that wins all their wars and has some generals is gonna win Honor Crown. So as long as, you don't throw, you pick your wars smart, you're just gonna win. Do I love that? Not really. But, I'll probably just pick it. I don't know what I'll pick it with yet, but I think it's more than likely I have a whole core of generals, just because then I get a bunch of free honor. And the only crown people really compete for is War Win and Honor Crown. And War Win Crown's super lame, so Honor Crown's the only interesting one, and now you're sort of forced to pick this. Don't love it, but is what it is. My overall view of changes: I like what I'm seeing with the new personalities. Maybe the balance isn't 100% there, but I can find bits and pieces of each of them that I really like. I like intangible bonuses that are a lot harder to quantify compared to something like Warrior, where it's like, yeah, my bonus is more offense is good. So, it's difficult to evaluate these, and that's going to be rough for people who aren't pretty smart or have someone smart telling them what to do. So I can see ghettos and mediocre people picking these, and even if they're good, not necessarily using them to their best strength. But I can also see a lot of good people just being like, no, pick more offense. And so these sort of get ignored, even if they don't fully deserve the ignoring that they get. Balance-wise, personalities seem fine. There's not a ton of change. Race-wise, I think probably Dwarf and Avian are the most behind the times. I think Avian's probably in one of the worst spots. Dwarf, even though they've got some new things going on, I think they're just falling behind offensively, and I don't really see a great way for them to overcome that. Maybe you run a couple Dwarf Artisans just to make runes for other people, right? And to raise tacticians, because you can't arson them. But for more punchy things, I'm liking Human. Dark Elf, Orc, Undead, even Gnome. TMs, I think all 3 TMs are good. I think Fairy is best, but it's so hard to get around the rune cost. Even if you end up with enough runes, your fairies are constantly at negative millions of TB from taking rune aid all the time. It's just a big pain in the butt, so probably just Elf is the way to go for honor farming for TMs. Halfling's still strong, but I feel like there's enough offense around to sort of bully Halfling a bit more. They're probably still really strong as hybrids, but I'm kind of liking Human right now. I'll probably not pick Human just because of how obviously good and easy they are, but who knows? I'm a bit of an idiot, so I do dumb stuff. Anyways, that was my rant. We went an hour and 10 minutes, not bad. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope my microphone was actually working, because I'm not going to be happy to do this again. Bye.